Do you ever struggle in measuring your effort and wonder what are you really learning from that? Well, we're going to discuss that in just a moment. Hello, I'm Tom Brush, and this is Bob Graham, and this is today's Antidote. Are you feeling boxed in, frustrated? Do you feel paralyzed? Do things look hopeless? Join us in our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, where leaders help you find another way and inspire you to achieve it. Well, good morning, Bob. How are you doing this morning?
Hey, I am doing really well, Tom. How are you?
I cannot complain for this Friday morning, which is good. So all week long, we've been talking about measuring your effort. And, we've gone through like what it is, why it's important, how it works for each of us. But the question comes up, and I actually had posted this on LinkedIn, and people were kind of like, I don't know really, what do I get out of measuring my effort? I know I need to set goals, but the value of measuring my effort, I'm not sure about. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think for me, the reason I measure my effort is, one, I want to make sure as much as possible that I'm not wasting time. Time is the ultimate item at premium cost to me. If I think of my time and the value my time has, that if I spend an hour writing a LinkedIn post, I want to make sure that delivers a result to me, because that hour could have been spent playing my guitar, watching TV, doing Facebook posts, making phone calls, writing a book. I could go on and on and on. So I'm constantly trying to balance my effort against other things, looking at what's delivering me the best result for the amount of time I put in. It also allows me to, I guess for me, I'm a scorecard keeper.
Okay.
So I like to keep track of how much time I'm investing in things. And at the end of the week, even though, I work for myself, I'm my own boss, I can choose when I work and when I don't work. I still have that 40-hour-a-week mentality that I need to work at least 40 hours a week. And so for me, having that tracking is useful for me. Not that I have a clock and I go, the thing with Tom was 22 minutes long, and this was, so I owe myself 38 minutes or 48 minutes, 38, I guess. I don't do it that closely, but I keep a loose indication. Like yesterday, I left early. I think I worked 7 hours yesterday. Today, I've already said I need to work 9 hours. I know you're going to laugh at me. I'm just being honest.
That's we all take from it what we take from it. So we talked a little bit about you measure it. What do you do with what you measure? So you talk to me through that process. You've completed the day, which is how you look at it. How do you then go about not only measuring it, but then figuring out what do I do from that?
One, I try to tick off items as I do them. When I write them down, I'm not always doing that every day, but I try more and more, because this week has been really busy with a lot of competing priorities. And I find that's when I've got to really track everything. Did I get this thing done? I owe this person this deliverable. Oh, I've got to follow up with that phone call. Plus, I've got some personal stuff that I'm trying to work through that often I have calls I was supposed to make Monday. It's Friday. They've got to get done today. Don't want to live a weekend without making those calls. You know what that's like.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? How do you take that and how do you use that information? Because we can learn from our efforts, but it's what we do next that really determines whether or not we've learned something from it. So how do you then put into action moving forward once you've learned what the results of your efforts were?
Great question. So what I've learned this week is I need to put a block of time for personal calls into my calendar next week. I went back over the last 3-4 weeks. Friday afternoon has been personal call time out of necessity. That's not the best time to be making personal calls. And personal calls being, call the bank and make sure this charge was right. Talk to Comcast about why the internet screwed up. Not like call Joe and ask Joe how he's doing.
Right.
And what I've found is those things have lagged every week for the last 4 weeks. So next week, I'm going to build a block into my schedule on Tuesday or Wednesday. It's going to be 2 or 3 hours on my calendar that says, boom, this is personal call time, or an hour a day. And so I've learned that if I don't, the lack of effort on those things has forced me to change my future effort planning. Does that make sense?
It does. Well, I think it's what you've learned is that if you don't prioritize it, it might not get done. And I think that's a very, I talk with a lot of my clients a lot about that, is because they'll tell me everything is important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if everything is important, nothing is important. And if you really want to get it done, you have to determine what has the greatest priority. And I think then you figure out how do you allocate your time so that you're accomplishing that. I had someone who responded on a LinkedIn post was like, yeah, I just have too much to do and I don't have enough time. And what I responded was, well, here's the downside. You're not going to get more time. Time is what it is, and it's limited. It's more about how do you prioritize that. And so let me ask you this. Once you've measured your efforts, how would you then go about prioritizing which of those things you need to do next? Because you probably are likely going to learn multiple things. How do you then figure out how to move that forward?
One of the things I notice is when something is on my list of things to do day after day, week after week, and it never gets done, that tells me that there's a disconnect between what I'm thinking and what I'm doing. And sometimes that means it wasn't meant to be. For instance, bots. You and I talk about bots. I'm a big fan of bots. We talked about bots weeks ago. I really pushed us on doing some bot stuff. And that is still on my list every week. Get bots worked out for Ring of Renegades every single week. But it's now been 9 weeks. At some point, I've got to say, hey, you know what, dude? Not really the thing you should be doing for whatever reason. But the lack of effort on it suggests that it doesn't fit where I am right now. And that's not good or bad. That's just acknowledgement. That's me looking down as Bob, the guy looking at Bob, the company, and going, hey, dude, this isn't a priority because you haven't done it. Conversely, there are things that come up during the week that become very important. So for instance, one of the things this week that moved up to the top of my list 2 days ago was when I realized the holiday weekend is next weekend, and you and I have talked about doing some Facebook ads, I needed to do some research on that. I moved that up to a priority knowing that next week we've got to execute that. So I'm constantly, I think the 3 variables here that you have to play with are, 1, what are you trying to achieve? What's your time look like? How much time can you put into something? And what is coming up next week? Just like when I managed people, I had to be thinking about their work week a week ahead of them. What do they need to do now so that they can do the thing next week? You can't say, well, what are you going to do this week? You don't look like a very good manager or leader in that case. You have to be thinking ahead. I try to think ahead with my business. Where that becomes complicated is, like you, we're single employee businesses. So you're looking ahead, you're living in the moment, and those two, you really have to think about which role you're in. So I try to take time every Friday to just look forward and think about next week and map out what I can. I look at the effort from the past week, sometimes 2-3 weeks, and I look at where I need to be the next week to, at the end of the week, go, hey, if I did these 12 things, it's a great week. If I do these 4 things, it'd be okay. If I do none of these things, I'm not on track. And I find the more I do that planning this week for next week, the better I sleep over the weekend, the less I work over the weekend, and the more I enjoy the following week because there's a plan there. And a lot of the leaders I talk to in companies just don't have a clear plan. They're on the seat of their pants and it's, Oh, it's Friday morning. I think I might do this. Oh, it's Friday afternoon. I might do this. That doesn't work real well when you're trying to grow something that's sustainable.
Yeah, and I also wondered, as you were saying that, I was thinking about how do we, I think sometimes those things that stick around on our list are either things that we don't, and we talked about this a little bit earlier this week, we either don't know enough about, and that means we got to go learn it. Some of them are ideas that we are just not ready for, and others are things that we're not good at or we don't like doing. And I think what I've struggled with is I haven't been good about saying, what are those things I don't like doing or I'm not really good at, and finding someone else to do it for me, because the time it would take me to do it is much different than it would take somebody who really knows what they're doing. And I think that's, what I'm trying to learn more and more about is, okay, what are those things that I'm constantly putting off, and why am I putting them off? And maybe I need to find another way to get that done, and the answer might not be me.
And that's perfectly okay. It doesn't mean you can break the bank to do it, but you can also talk to someone. There's ways to barter. There's ways to fit, so I also think I find for myself, sometimes the fear of the unknown is more powerful than just figuring it out, like Facebook ads.
Right.
It's not that hard once you think it through.
Right.
But you got to devote a 3-hour block and say, I'm going to learn this thing right now, not 10 minutes. Oh, let me watch a quick YouTube video and then go back to your life. And I think more and more I'm trying to block time out in chunks to devote to a task. I've gotten really good at 25-minute windows, work for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, 25-5, 25-5. I find that makes me more efficient. And having a set thing to do in that 25 minutes really makes me more successful.
Great. All right, Bob. So I think as we're getting ready to wind it up, why don't you what's your one tip for today?
I think it would be to accept that whatever way you approach your effort and measure it, you're always going to be coming up short. I've never had a week where I've gotten every single thing done, and I don't expect to have a week. And I think a lot of people, I had a to-do list I didn't get done, I'm a failure, and then they're bitter. And then the next week it happens again. I think if you can just accept that stuff comes up, you're never going to be perfect. And as a solopreneur, I can tell you, if I do 5 things today, there are probably 5 other things I should have done today. So it's a losing proposition on your best day. Right. That's just reality.
Yeah, I like that. And I'll add that, to me, it's one thing to measure your effort. It's important to look at it, but it's what are you learning from it? So if you don't take that next step, it's one thing to write it down and look at, okay, was I supposed to make 6 calls? Yep, I made that. Or I did and I fell too short. Well, what did I learn? And going that next step to say, what did I learn by doing this effort? Is something that I would encourage you to make sure you're moving forward with. So with that, I hope that everyone has a great day and a good weekend. And we will see you here on Monday, probably back at 8 a.m.
Yes.
So you never know. We're Renegade. We might show up at a different time. But until then, everyone, have a great day, and we will see you next week.
Hey, are you struggling with how to measure your effort? Join the Renegade Wayfinders, where we help leaders take powerful action and overcome the obstacles standing in their way. Go to renegadewayfinders.com.